Hello, everyone. My name is Fia Gloss, and we're back. We're doing another interactive fiction. Um, I enjoy these things, so uh, painfully uh, underappreciated. So anyway, we're back. I just picked a random one off of Itch.io. This one is In Transit, or I in Transit. This is by Asuwang. Uh, Feel free to correct me on this. So anyway, here is the description. For best results, please play in full screen and with headphones. Content warning, brief mentions of suicide, body horror, and death. A short, semi-autobiographical / horror Twine game made over the course of a weekend. This is my first foray into Twine. An experimental emotional snapshot of my life right now. Runtime is about 10 to 12 minutes. Please feel free to leave feedback. So we're just gonna run through this kind of my traditional style, which is I'm just gonna kind of offer my thoughts up as I go through, and we'll just see how it goes. So I'm gonna try putting this in full screen. How does that look? Like becoming a professional here. So anyway, In Transit, a game by asuwang. You're riding the bus to a bar for your friend's 25th birthday. The main lights illuminate the bus's interior in a bright magenta. It reminds you of the latest Blade Runner film, although you've never watched it. Your roommate always likes to tease you about how few movies you've actually seen. She's sitting next to you. Your friend. Not your roommate, your friend. Your all-time favorites are National Treasure 1 and 2. You'd die defending those masterpieces. Well, that's... We've all got our cross to bear, I guess, and you've chosen quite the challenge. You have your head propped up on your hand as you lean against the window, looking away from her. No words are exchanged between you two, a rare moment of comfortable silence. You don't feel the usual bubbling urge in your throat to spew out words at a frantic pace. It's night outside. As the bus passes over the bridge from northeast to northwest, a seemingly tenuous connection 200 feet above the gaping maw of the river, you can see the skyline of the city clearly. The numerous bright lights give the impression that the city stays alive with a sort of youthful mania into the early hours of the morning. But after being here for a couple of years, you know that besides the 24-hour coffee shop or the diner, the city tends to sleep well before midnight. So I'm liking the descriptions here, but my only note on it is that like some of these sentences can be a bit long. Some of these can be a bit long, and so I would just make sure you maybe like go through and kind of shorten these. Like I naturally kind of stopped here and then sort of treated this as another sentence over here, but um, that's just me. So just thought I'd throw that in there as I noticed it. So I'm liking the audio. It's sort of like the feeling of being in a place. It's just probably recorded on a phone or something. So anyway, you miss staying up until sunrise at the coffee shop down in Southeast, a late night haven for the restless and the lonely. Last year, you had spent numerous weekends furiously working on the illustrations for a children's book you'd promised you'd have done by Monday, or the comic pages you got an extension on from the writer because you were finishing your thesis at the same time. You had become so much of a regular that the barista would even give you an occasional free snack between the numerous refills of the teapot, or when you finally started feeling drowsy, the cups of mocha. During these hectic times, you thought of designer Bruce Mao. Free snack. It was 1:36 a.m., and you were crying while reading an essay that was part of your thesis research. The writer was a second-generation Chinese American who was detailing his struggles regarding his sexuality, an unspoken point of contention with among his family, with such an honesty and vulnerability that just hit way too close to home for you. The barista had given you a free cookie. Whether their generosity was spurred on by your outburst or motivated by a need to get rid of the day-olds, you weren't sure. But you were grateful for the way they had wordlessly slid the wrapped treat next to you. Peanut butter, your favorite. So, again, just noticing a couple long sentences. Not that there's anything wrong with a long sentence on its own. It's just if it's regularly happening, it you're confining the rhythm of reading it to a certain I guess length, for lack of a better word. You're narrowing the rhythm of being able to read it, and a long sentence is a slow burn, and so sometimes you need to like make it walk a little more briskly through things sometimes. Anyway, just thought I'd throw that out there. Bruce Mao. Stay up late. Strange things happen when you've gone too far, been up too long, worked too hard, and you're separated from the rest of the world. You certainly feel separated from the rest of the world right now in this near empty bus. Its only passengers being you, her, the bus driver, and two strangers, all bathed in that neon magenta. Is it you who is moving, whisked along in the belly of the metal beast, or are you simply sitting still as everything else rotates beneath your feet? Okay, we got a change of font here. We'll see. You may find yourself feeling detached from the world at large from time to time, but you can no longer immerse yourself in that desired isolation that breeds creativity. Now you have roommates who sleep in the same bedroom as you, who share the same workspace as you, who eat, drink, shit, pay $300 for rent every month in the same small apartment as you. Friends who sleep in the same. You still go to that coffee shop, staying up late, working on this and that, but while before you had been able to leave on a whim and return home on a whim, you now have roommates, friends, that question your motives. You're no longer able to wander freely, privately, both in the world and within the depths of your mind. So, in some ways, I can sort of identify with this, the author here, of kind of like getting to that point in your life where you do feel simultaneously understood and misunderstood all the time. It's sometimes it's treated as like a just a thing that you go through. I want to give the author some credit here, though, that it's not being treated as like this solo journey, that the author's obviously being mature enough here that it's not just like, yeah, I'm just so in my brain and everything, unlike everybody else who's just having fun. No, it's not being treated that way at all, which is, I actually really appreciate it. And I think it shows some maturity towards their own introspection. So anyway, going on. Feeling lonely is so much worse when you're not actually alone. You don't consider yourself to be antisocial. People frequently describe you as, quote, the most introverted extrovert, unquote, they've ever met. You've managed to make friends fairly easily over the years thanks to one simple trick. Do whatever it takes in every conversation to make them laugh. My personal strategy is to constantly ask people about themselves and then patiently wait for them to ask me about my life, and it doesn't work very well. So that's my little nugget of wisdom. But you've learned that playing the self-appointed court jester means that when the audience wants you to provide them something more than amusement, You run away terrified. That sort of thing is outside of your expertise. You distance yourself and bemoan how difficult it is to connect with others on a deeper level than cheap jokes and laughs. And by the time you've drained the ichor from your self inflicted emotional wounds and stopped feeling sorry for yourself, they've already gone to someone else with their problems, and you can go back on stage and perform once again. Dance, Jester, dance. So, again, now the font has changed again, and I still don't quite understand the contextual basis for it as a reader. Um, I don't know if there was supposed to be, or if that was just something screwy that happened on my end, but maybe look into that. I don't know. He's been so crabby lately. Yesterday, he just snapped at me when I asked him how his day was. She's talking about your other roommate, who had opted out of the party tonight to sleep in. You nod in agreement as you ignore a pang of guilt. You secretly wish you had the same audacity to verbally lash out when she asks you the same question, day after day. You know it's a nice gesture, an attempt to strike up a conversation, but you hate admitting to her just how empty your waking hours are. Can't she get a clue from how the tension spikes up in the room every time she makes that particular inquiry? And yet she continues to routinely ask, without fail, "How was your day?" You've been feeling that tension more and more lately, increasing the desire you always get when you're around people for too long to pack your bags, jump onto a bus under cover of night, and set off for America's middle of nowhere without a single goodbye. You hoped that impulse would have been curbed when you moved in with them. They were supposed to be different than the rest. Together, you were supposed to be a team. Okay, so like already getting going back to some earlier things, like this right here is got really good rhythm. um well, a little like we've got a long sentence here, right? But under it, we're talking about leaving, and we're like kind of going in this like manic run-on sentence here, and then we kind of like reground ourselves with these shorter, more succinct, more solid sentences. And this is the kind of thing where I think like this shows like really good rhythm to the writing that a couple of the earlier ones could just use a little editing to keep up with this level of like quality, I would say. Anyway, supposed to be a team. They were your closest friends from college. The three of you had drifted towards each other during those precious and formulative years, as if survivors in a wreck trying desperately not to drown. You shared with them inside jokes and quiet tones, 1/3 the price of takeout from the Chinese restaurant down the street from the studio, and the gossip of the other students. They shared with you late-night conversations around race and being part of the diaspora, proclamations of love, plans for a shared future. Others envied the closeness of your tight-knit group. It seemed only logical and cheaper that you would end up living with them. But the tension came back, and it had only gotten stronger each time the three of you made plans and wrote down ideas for the artist collective you were definitely going to start up later in the year, or whenever he had talked about the upcoming conventions and moving together to LA or Detroit, or whenever she made a comment about how she was positive that you were all going to be friends forever. You can't stand the presumptuousness. All you ever wanted from others is to be entertained and to entertain them in return. The idea of friends forever and the expectations that come with it is uncomfortable, not entertaining. And yet, you still desire to be close to others, to be understood. You just don't want to go through the messy work of fostering intimacy by taking your ugly thoughts and shaping them into the right words, a mindset common for someone your age, a selfishness of youth that can never be satisfied. Okay, I kind of maybe more understand now the shift of the font. I guess I think what it's supposed to kind of be is when you're just explaining what's happening, it has this font here. I don't know fonts, so I don't know how to describe it, but it switches to the more like monospace font, I guess you would say. Maybe that's wrong. When it's kind of like you making a judgment call on your own actions, which is cool. I would maybe, I don't know, I almost, yeah, well, let's just see where it goes. I would say if it plays an important role, maybe it could be stylized in a different way that feels more intentional, I guess. Anyway, let's go on though. Let's see where this goes. She makes a joke about how the birthday boy is practically an old man now. Her being a year older than him colors the joke with a shade of self deprecation. You assure her that no, you guys are not old, you're a bunch of 20 somethings who are free to be self absorbed shitheads and take the meandering path because fuck everyone else's expectations. You're young, and that's what young people do, and everyone's probably going to end up dead by your mid 30s because of climate change anyway. You both get the sneaking suspicion you're trying to reassure yourself at this point. The meandering path. It's the night before you leave for the city once more, and the three of you are in his car outside of the 7-Eleven by her house. He and you are eating Dipping Dots, something you were both very excited to find stocked in a 7-Eleven of all places. You're both sad to find how disappointing the ice cream of the future really is. There's hardly any flavor in the tiny flash frozen pellets, and since it didn't come with one of those flat wooden spoons that remind you more of a tongue depressor than a spoon, you had to resort to eating it with your fingers, quickly resulting in sticky hands and arms. The three of you chat about the future, which you hope is brighter than what Dipping Dots seems to promise. They're finishing up school while you've been out in the real world for half a year now. You talk about the struggles you've been having trying to find work and how everyone tells you that, quote, you'll be fine, just wait it out and the work will come to you. She talks about nursing school and how she supposes she's fortunate that the world will always need nurses before trailing off, leaving the words, but not illustrators, unspoken. You can't find it in yourself to feel the least bit indignant. You don't tell her that up until a year ago, you had made plans to never live past 26, the age she is now. Things are different now. Now you think 75 is a fine age to expire, 5 years older than your father. A phone call, a coming out, you're crying, trying to get the words out, and it's the hardest thing you've ever done. You never had to be this open with your parents. Oh. Oh, you did that thing. I've done that thing before. How much longer until our stop? You check your phone. About 15 minutes. You tell her as such. You both fall back into silence. So I don't have an Instagram or a Facebook, and I wish I didn't have a Twitter. So let's just text. Let's check text messages. Let's check. Mom's texted us. Let's see. It's a good night message followed by a string of hearts and heart eye emojis that's 3 times longer than the actual written message. She makes it a point to send you one of these texts every night. Her last message before this is her saying how proud she and Dad are of you, how you don't need to worry if there's no jobs on the immediate horizon, and that they're always there for you because you're family. You're so afraid of disappointing her that you desperately wish she hated you instead. You quickly type, love you too, Mom, good night, and send it back. My mom doesn't know what emojis are, so it's kind of weird. I don't really think of it, but okay, I guess we'll check Twitter, which is never a good thing to do. Feeling emboldened somehow, you decide to shout your feelings at your 400-something followers. Okay, you've got like 10 times as many as I do. You type out, that feel when you don't get the same creative fulfillment making art. It sucks, bruh. I'm so fucking sick of illustrating other people's stories. Hashtag regret for not learning how to write. I can't figure out if I'm just burnt out or lazy, LMAO. Anyone want to do shrooms later? We'll go with the classic feels. You send the tweet. You decide to delete it. Fair enough. What would they know anyway? Oh, we don't want to go on Facebook, do we? Well, let's check Instagram. I don't know how Instagram works, but we'll check it. You scroll through the endless stream of images: a friend's work in progress for an upcoming comic, a mutual's recent editorial job, a baby photo from the art director that hasn't emailed you in 3 months, a former classmate's 100 heads drawing challenge. You quickly scroll back up and attempt to keep the creeping jealousy at bay and click through the stories instead. You end up viewing your ex's story, an image of a sunset from a rooftop with some filter that's too bright and has too much contrast, while he rambles in the overlaid text about the importance of love and connection to each other and nature. You scoff, not because of any residual bitterness from being dumped on the 3-year anniversary of your relationship, because of but because of how absolutely corny he's become. You've changed too, though, it's only fair. Interesting. So now we have this thing here, the the random letters. I would just like to point out right here that things like Instagram and even Twitter and Facebook, um, you know, you got to keep in mind all the time that this isn't like this is a curated version of a person's story of themselves. I think everybody's aware of it, so much so that it's a cliche now. But um, when I recently started making things, I've had coworkers and things like that who are like, "Oh yeah, maybe I should start working on a comic idea that I had," or something like that. And as an outsider, looking in on someone who's maybe struggling to find a creative vision or a creative voice, it's hard to know what to say other than, "Yeah, you should just go for it. Do it. I want to see it. Let's do it. I want to. What's your story idea? Explain it to me." That kind of thing. And I understand maybe to this author's perspective. I'm more familiar with being on the other side of this, seeing somebody that's going through this. Not that I haven't struggled creatively or anything like that, but um, you know, I hope by the end of this, maybe I can have a little more perspective on what it means to be this kind of person. And anyway, let's go on. I'm just rambling now. You've never seen this app before. Is this malware? You press it. Curious. You're a fraud. Not by a conscious choice, but by a lack of trying. You thought someone would just tell you how it works, how to be human. So somewhere along the way, you decided you were so pathetic that you've given up trying to figure it out. Everything about you is backwards. Your body, your mind, all of it. Just throw the whole damn thing away. The warranty is already null and void. You feel your already binded chest feel even tighter. It's getting harder to breathe. Something's coming. Nothing is right. What's wrong with you? It's like the pivot on a fulcrum, where each sway up and down hurts more and more. I want to stop. I want to be in transit forever. I want you to talk to me. I want to be ignored. I want you to love me. I want you to hate me. You're the reason my existence has any meaning. It wouldn't mean anything to me if you went away forever. Somehow, in the way that only the imperfections of the human mind can rationalize, they are all simultaneously true. Maybe you're not the problem. Maybe someone else is. Maybe everyone else is, with their contradictions and their half lies and quarter truths and the hate, so much fucking hate in charge of this garbage world. And yet, despite the hurt and suffering that seems to get worse and worse with every tweet and every Facebook chain post and every news segment, you still don't feel their hurt, others' hurt. You only know logically that it's all wrong. It's wrong, all wrong. Did growing up in these times tear out your capacity for emotional empathy, or were you just born without it? You're a child visiting your grandparents. You're quiet, as you usually are during these intergenerational family get togethers. You don't feel like confronting these figures who, in your mind, represent the horrible reality of non existence that will befall all of you one day with their sagging skin and their yellowed teeth and their thinning hair. I just came out here to have a good time, and I'm feeling so attacked right now. You can keep everything under control if you just don't talk. But then your mother grabs you after lunch at the retirement home and says to you in a hushed, angry tone, "Talk to them. Grandpa's probably not going to be around for much longer." And you snap. You storm out into the parking lot and start screaming. You just have to yell and yell until your throat is hoarse and raw. You need to feel it, it needs to hurt. Your dad comes out after hearing you and tries to get you to stop by hugging you as tightly as he can, his larger stature completely enveloping you. It makes him feel real and present. You aren't comforted. It just reminds you that one day he will die as well. You continue to scream, the sound muffled by his chest pressed against your face. 4 years later, your grandpa dies on the other side of the country. Your dad goes alone to the funeral, not even bothering to ask you if you wanted to come. It's your first personal experience with death, and you aren't even allowed the opportunity to confront it. Now death is just an abstract concept for you to feel indifferent about, and that makes you feel even more like a calloused monster. But it's not my fault. You look up from your phone as a terrible low hum enters your brain to see everything around you start to shimmer as the magenta glow becomes brighter. You look outside the window again. There are no more city lights, just an impenetrable blackness. It's not my fault. The bus driver, the other passengers, your roommate, their boundaries are melting away. The stench of flesh soaking in the air, and everything within them is bleeding out as a steady stream. There seems to be so much more inside them than a human body could ever possibly contain. Your roommate grabs your arms and shakes you violently. Is she screaming at you, angry, afraid, joyful? It's not my fault. You can't tell anymore. She has no throat. It's not my fault. They've all become one now, just a cloudy pool that covers the bus floor. You stand in them all alone. They slosh against your ankles. The magenta light is blinding. Not my fault. It's not my fault. Be better, be better, be better, be better, be better, be better. Did you want the stop back there? What? Did you want the stop back there? The bus driver repeats. Sorry, I didn't see it. You say yes, you did. She apologizes. I can just drop you off here if that's all right. You say, that's fine. The driver lets you and your friend off at the corner of a construction site. Your fingers are freezing from the night air as you check the location of the bar again. You and her start the estimated 8-minute walk. Did you bring your keys? She asks, 2 minutes in. You did. You never leave without them. Oh, I forget to bring them all the time. It's my fatal flaw. The idea that being forgetful about your keys is comparable to Oedipus's anger, arrogance, or Hamlet's indecision strikes you as so remarkably funny that you laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh until the sound is so infectious that she joins in the laughter as well. As the two of you continue to trek to the bar, laughing all the way, you silently hope that in a couple of years down the road you can look back at the night and laugh at it as well. The end. In Transit. Copyright Asuwang 2019. Asuwang. I don't know. I'm not good at names. Sorry in advance. So, it very much lives up to its description as sort of an emotional snapshot. And this is something that, I guess Twine kind of has a reputation for, which is simultaneously deserved and undeserved. So, a lot of good writing there, in my opinion. So, if the author genuinely feels like they're not a good writer, that's just absurd. So, let me put that out there. My little nitpicks here and there are like, that's like far beyond the nitpicks of a normal writer, I guess you would say. And in some ways, this person's probably a better writer than me. Um, Probably in every way. But uh, so it's a very interesting narrative. Um, as much as it skips around, it doesn't feel confusing. I feel like I was just living the experience of being lost in my thoughts on a bus ride. Um, you know, the dad part of me or whatever wants to just go ahead and run in and, you know, put this person on my chest and just be like, don't worry, your 20s get over, you get into your 30s, and then you're like basically the exact same physically, but mentally a little more with it. Um, but they'll figure that out. So, no big deal. Um, so it's very interesting, and it reminds me a lot of the artistic people I work with, myself not included, who struggle maybe to feel as though they're really doing everything they can to live up to the potential they see in themselves. And that's like feeling like you're not accomplishing what you should be is this like weird double-edged thing all the time, that it's a double-edged sword, in that it's important to keep you moving, but it can quickly like grow so large that it's not worth that it's just injuring you, and you're not really getting anywhere because you're just constantly grappling with feeling like you're not doing enough. um I don't know what advice to give about that, and there probably isn't any because it's probably different for everyone. um but it's very real. It resonates with me a lot in this story, and I can totally resonate with that. um anyway, I don't want to spend too much time sort of trying to rationalize the feelings of this person that I don't know and that I've only met in a brief story. And I don't want to spend the time trying to, reassure them of anything all other than I just want to say, like, this is a well-written story. um I would love to see the skills of this writing put towards a less personal narrative, and instead put towards um a more conceptual narrative um that they've crafted. That would be really cool, and it would be a neat graduation from this. Not that like, writing more traditional narratives are better than extremely personal ones, but it would be very interesting to see, asuwang or asuwang um, create something, create more characters, and get out of, you know their own head for a little bit to create someone else, or to take the feelings that they have about something and turn it um, into a story that affects a bunch of people. And this is the kind of writing I really just want to see more of, especially in the interactive fiction horror genre. Um, so very, very cool. I am extremely impressed, more than anything else, that this is their first foray into Twine. That's quite impressive. So I've now really locked myself in here. Um, Super cool. Um, Definitely want to see more. Definitely want to see what happens in a longer period of time than a weekend. Um, the only notes I would give as far as the story itself is just like I said, I think the differences between the narrative monologue, I guess you would call it, and the inner monologue, I feel like there should be more done to make it a little more um a little more delineated between the two, in my opinion. It just, if sometimes it kind of, it at first it just felt like, oh weird, the font changed, that must be a mistake. Like I didn't, it didn't register as like a deliberate change, and so that would be cool. And then I I kind of wish the color scheme was a little different to maybe match this this aesthetic a little bit more. Um, White on black is totally fine, and blue for the links is totally fine. Um, but it would just be cool if it was a little different and matched maybe the more of the tones that are kind of mentioned. And it could be subtle, just like a subtle magenta to the white, or something like that, or a subtle yellowish black or whatever, just to kind of make it a little different. But anyway, overall, I'm very impressed. Like the story a lot. This is kind of like quintessential to a Twine game. So, love to see more. Hopefully, we do. And I will leave a link in the description. So if you guys would like to read through it yourself, you totally can. And give this creator some love if you liked it. I will definitely be rating it. So I will see you guys on the next one, I guess, because I'm doing this kind of thing for now, for fun. So let's check out some more games, guys. What a great story. What an interesting story, I should say. And I'll see you guys next time.